So in drafting your basic skirts, short skirts, long skirts, three-quarter skirts, you fold into two. The material is already folded into two, and the width of the material is 36 inches. The length of the material is 26 inches. I just intend using 22 inches out of this 26 inches. So a yard of material should be enough for you, depending on how fat the person is and depending on the length of the skirt you want. This is going to be a skirt that should end at the knee of the person. That is why the length is that short. So when you fold into two, the next thing is to measure out. Today we are going to talk about how to draft and cut out your basic skirt. Straight cut with band. You can actually have a bandless skirt or a skirt with band. So but today we are going to draft out and learn how to sew a straight cut fitted skirt with band and an overlap slit. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for always commenting. Please share this video and like. All right, let's start right away. So for measuring out, we are starting with the vertical measurement first. That is the standard measurement. So we are going to get our waistline and our hip line, and then of course the hem of the skirt. From the waistline, you come down by, from this line, from the top of the material, you come down by 1 inch. This line is going to serve as our waistline. This is our waistline. Now for the hip line, standard hip line is 8 inches or 9 inches from the waistline, depending on how tall and how fat the person is. So I'm going to measure 8 inches from this waistline because the person is not quite tall and not that fat. You can make use of 9 inches. It all depends on the body measurements of the person you are sewing for. So from here to the hem of the garment. Now this is going to be a straight cut skirt, not a penciled skirt. So that's just it. It's just so simple. The next thing is now to impute the horizontal measurement. The horizontal measurement is actually the person's body measurement, the waist circumference of the person and the hip circumference. These are the two basic measurements you need for sewing a skirt, a basic skirt, or drafting your basic skirt. So the waist measurement is 36 inches. So I'm going to divide into 4 by folding the tape, or you can just divide. It's still the same thing. 36 inches divided by 4 is 9 inches. Remember, the material is unfold into 2, and then you draft from the back of a material. While drafting, you draft from the back. So on the waistline, you measure out 9 inches. Now remember, on the waistline you also have, on the waistline you would also have to add your darts. That's if it is not a stretchy material, because stretchy materials clings to the body, so they don't need you don't need to add darts. But if the material is an Akara material, not a stretchy material, you need to add darts so that it can be fitted. So you give your dart allowance. So in addition to the 9 inches, I'll add 1 inch dart allowance. So after adding your that allowance, you now add 2 inches sewing allowance, which is actually the end of this material. Then you come to the hip line. On the hip line, the hip circumference of the person is 38 inches. You divide 38 inches into 4. Divide into 2. Then you divide into 4. 9.4. You place it on the hip line. You mark it out. Then you add 2 inches sewing allowance. So as you can see, we didn't talk about that allowance because that allowance only applies to the waistline. And that is it. So down to the hem of the material, 24 inches, 22 inches rather, because I'm going to add 2 inches band to make it 24. I'm just going to mark exactly what I have on the hip line exactly. If it was a penciled skirt, I would have subtracted. So the next thing is to connect my lines and cut out. So this is the hem of the material. We just marked exactly what we have on the hip line. We just marked it here. We are going to connect the lines. It's a straight cut skirt. So you cut out. So the next thing now is to measure the back, to get the back panel, and the back panel is where the real work is, because remember we are going to have an overlap, and then we are going to have the zip allowance too. So once you cut out the front panel, you are going to use it to draft out the back panel. The only difference will just be the addition of the space for zip allowance and so for the back pattern, you fold the remaining material and then you give space. As you can see, it's already on fold. It's already on fold. This is the front pattern, and then I'm going to place it on the material. As you can see, I gave 4 inches space. This 4 inches space, that is the distance between the front panel and the back panel. As I place them, 4 inches from here to here is 4 inches. The reason is because I want to have an overlap slit. So the overlap slit will make use of this 4 inches. I actually want it to be 3 inches, but then I'm giving 4 inches because I'm going to turn in with the lining. By the time I'm done turning with the lining, I'm sewing in the darts. At least 1 inch has gone. So these 3 inches that will remain is going to be for the overlap. This is also going to be act as the zip allowance. Normally the zip allowance is meant to be 1 to 2 inches, whether you are sewing gown, sewing a top, or sewing your skirt. But since it's an overlap slit, I will need an extra because I'll need to overlap. You will watch it in this video. So you pin together. Once you pin together, this is already 4 inches like I told you. This is 4 inches. Measure out 4 inches. So you have, make sure you have enough material, especially for the back pattern, because that's where the real work lies. This is 4 inches like I told you. So I'm going to draw a line. That line is going to act to remind me of where the 4 inches starts. It's not a must, but then it can just serve as a good guide. The next thing I'm going to do now is to trace out as you can see. There is no other measurement on the back pattern. We are just drafting out the front pattern and giving space for our zip allowance and the overlap allowance. That's all. I would like you to share this video, comment. If you have any question, just drop it in the comment section. I will attend to it as soon as possible. So once you've done that, the next thing is now you can now separate them. But before you do that, sorry, I just remembered. So the next thing now is to notch. Where are you notching? Let me remove this front pattern. So you see the advantage of the straight line. You know where the 4 inches starts from. You know where so I know that this is the 4 inches. I know that this is the 4 inches. Now the next thing is to notch. I'm going to notch here, so that even when I separate this material, I will know this is where the zip allowance starts from. So I'll just notch it at the beginning of the straight line. And then after that, I'll separate the material. I've notched it. So I can now separate the material. After which I will go and turn in the material with a lining. I'm not separating the material from the notched line. The notched line is just to remind me. The notched line is just to remind me of where the zip allowance started. I'm going to separate it from where it's folded, which is here, not this line. So I'm just going to run it down. Now for your overlap, it depends on how much you want it to overlap. I mean the slit. If you want it 5 inches, that's fine. 7 inches, that's okay. Just make sure you have enough material. For this, just 3 inches is okay. So as you can see, the back panel is in 2 pieces now. I'm just going to fold it that way and then go and join with the lining. Once I'm done joining with the lining, we'll come back for inserting a dart, how to insert that on a skirt pattern. So we are back from the sewing machine. As you can see, I've turned over with a lining. So it depends on what you want, depending on the material. If it's something that you can just use that way, it's fine. Now the next thing is for us to impute our darts. So in imputing our darts, you fold into two equal parts. As you can see, I replicated the waistline, the hip line. This is the under hip line, and the aim of this is for hip contour, to snatch the hip and then bring it out very well. So this is the under hip, this is the hip line, this is the waistline. So for your dart application, you come to your waist. Remember, we added 1 inch sewing allowance, 1 inch dart allowance where we were drafting, and the aim of the allowance is for this, for you to be able to apply your dart. Now for your dart, the stand on a skirt, the standard is 2.5 to 3 inches. 2.5 inches for slim persons, 3.5 for someone who is maybe fatter or has more hips. So I'm going to use 3 inches. So that 3 inches, you come in from the folded part. See, this is the open part. So you go in, this is the line, you go in on the folded part, 3 inches, you mark. If it's 2.5 you are using, you go in by 2.5. After going in by 3 inches, you give an additional 1 inch. So the length of the dart, that is where it's going to stop, is 2 inches above the hip line. For a skirt, 2 inches above the hip line. So you come, this is the hip line, you mark 2 inches. So for a guide, you draw a straight line from the middle of these 2 points to this place, to these 2 inches. Make sure you find the middle. You can use this 0.5. The distance between here to here is 1 inch. So 0.5, 0.5. So you draw from that middle down. So the next thing is to connect this point to this line. Connect this line to this line. Please, if you don't understand or if you have any question, you can ask in the comment section. I will attend to it as soon as possible. Connect. I've done the first one, so I'll connect this one too. So this is the way it will look at the end of the day. So that while sewing, you just follow the line, fold into 2 like this, follow this line, sew it till it meets this point. It will finally be pointed at the end. You turn the other side, you do the same thing. Same for the back pattern. This is the back pattern. Before you start applying it, make sure you have sewn it together at that point where you niched it initially. That is to remove the zip allowance and the overlap allowance. So as you can see, it's now together. It's now together. It was sewn together at the middle. So since this is out, while measuring for your data allowance, you don't include the zip allowance or the overlap allowance. You just start from the midline, the middle of that line. So like I said, this is the waistline, hip line, under hip. So you come to your hip line, depending on the one you are using, 2.5 or 3.5, that's the stand, or 3, that's the standard. So I'm using 3. I'm going to repeat it the same way I did it before. You go in by 3 inches, you mark another 1 inch, and then you come to the hip line, you go up by 2 inches, find the middle of these 2 points, so go to the sewing machine to sew it in. And after that, the next thing is the overlap. The overlap, remember, it's an overlap slit. So what you do is you come to the end of the skirt. You determine how long you want your slit to be. For this slit, the customer wants it to be 5 inches long. So from the hem of the garment, I'll measure out 5 inches. Sorry, 6 inches long. Measure out 6 inches. This is where it stopped. So I'll open it up, open the slit up to this point and sew it in. Let me sew it in the machine. Okay, so we are back from the sewing machine. We've sewn it in. This is the back. This is where the front looks like. So this is the darts. This is the darts. We've sewn it in. And then for the overlap, like I said, you go up by the how many inches you want, depending on how long you want the slit to be. Depending on how long you want the slit to be. This person wants it to be 6 inches long. So from the hem of the garment, you measure 6 inches. This is where the 6 inches stops, from the hem of the skirt rather. 6 inches, you go up. So we got there. When you get there, you loosen. Remember, you sewed it together. You loosen together up to the 6 inches. And when you get to that point where 6 inches is, you now sew it together. Just sew it across. That's just it. So this is the overlap. Let me turn the front. This is where it's meant to be. After joining, you will see it better. So this is actually the slits, but it's an overlap. So the next thing is for me to go and join both sides. I will show you here how to join. Just the same way you join other ones. So this is it. This is the slits. If you want yours to be longer, fine. It all depends on what you want. So with this, you are just done with the skirt. So the next thing is just to join. So while joining, this is how you join. You place the right side, make sure they are facing each other, and remember the zip allowance is still intact. Right side facing each other, make sure two of them are equal like this. Everything, make sure the darts, this is the dart line on the front panel, this is the dart line on the back panel. Just make sure they're in the same line, and then you join. So for the hip contour, you actually measure the person's under hip. It's not a standard, you just measure the person's under hip, where the hip stops, just measure it and get the circumference so that the place will be tight. You tighten it while sewing so that the hip will be out to carry the hip. Some persons might not want this, but then it has a way of making the hip, bringing out the hip when you wear your skirt. So these are the lines you are going to make use of. If you are sure your lines are correct, just go back to your initial measurements, the initial measurements you made from the person while measuring. Remember, now you've removed your sewing allowance. You've removed some of your sewing allowance while turning in the linen. You've removed your dart allowance. So the remaining now is the one you will use to join both sides. So this is what you do for the two of them. You can hold with a pin together. So you come to the waist. The person's waist measurement is 36 inches. So 36 inches divided by 2. As you can see, it's no longer into two folds. You spread it out. So because of that, you no longer divide by 4 like you did while trying to draft it out. You now divide by 2. So whatever the person's real measurement is divided by 2. So 36 divided by 2 will give us 18. We place it, so this is 18. We place it in such a way that the distance between the remaining will be equal on both sides. This is 18. From 18 to the end is 20 inches. Let's see if this point is up to 2 inches. This is 18. It's not up to 2 inches, so you shift. It's just to ensure that the difference between, so this is now 1.5. Okay, this is 18. This is 18. This is 18. Good. 1.5. 1.5. So this is where the person's, this is the waist. You come to your hip line. The hip circumference is 38 inches. You divide by 2. 38 divided by 2. You can just fold with your tape. If you're not with your calculator, you can just fold with your tape. This 38 divided by 2 give you 19. Place it 19. Then you come to your under hip. The circumference of the under hip and that of the hip is usually just a difference of 1 or 2 inches. However, it depends on how big or how large the person's hips are. So the under hip of this person is 34 inches. So when you divide by 2, you have 17. Now, like I said, this is a stretch cut, so we are not penciling it. On another video, we'll learn how to sew a pencil skirt, and then you now take it down, just stretch down. So whatever you have, you just take it down. So the next thing is to join these points, and when you join them, you go over to the machine, to the sewing machine, and sew them, and that will be it. It's just so simple. Including your gown, when you are done sewing in everything, your dart and the rest, and you want to join, that's how you join it. Go back to the person's initial measurements. So you see, this is the aim of the hip contour. As you can see, from the hip line down to this place, it is curving in. So the aim is just to bring out the hip very well. But it all depends on how large the person's hip is. If it's someone who is with a prominent hip, you would have seen the curve very well. So you just take it down. Down straight. So while sewing, just follow the line and sew it. So we are done. We are back from the sewing machine, and we are done with sewing our skirts. This is the overlap. This is the overlap slit. As you can see how neat it is. This is the space for the zip. We are here to add the zip. And then, of course, we are here to add the band. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how to cut out the band and how to attach it to your skirts. And then this is it. As you can see, it's so simple. Thank you for watching. Please, if you have any question, please ask me in the comment section. I'll attend to it as soon as possible. Thanks for subscribing. Please turn on your notifications so that if I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Share with others, like and comment. Thanks so much.